major activity in the reenactment of the death of those who die every 15 minutes in auto crashes is an adult dressed as the Grim Reaper who walks through the school halls to the sound of a heartbeat playing over the school public address system. The Grim Reaper then takes one pre-selected student volunteer out of the class. These student volunteers, known thereafter as the Living Dead, then proceed to a room to have their faces made up with theatrical makeup to make them look dead. Mock notifications of their deaths are then presented to their classmates and parents by a uniformed police officer who read mock obituaries. Then they simulate being dead by returning to class with instructions not to communicate to anyone.
We had a wonderful Grim Reaper. The first time I met him, his name is Laramie Murgerson, and he is an agent with the TABC. And when I was introduced to him, he was sitting at his desk, and as he stood up and put this hand out that was bigger than mine together, and stood up, and I said, "Oh my goodness, I see a Grim Reaper's costume in your future." In fact, my son was one of them. And he said, the first thing any of them did was look around in the class to see if any of the other kids were in there. So Devin looked around, and he was the only one in there. So he knew it was for him. And the police officer comes in right afterwards, and the Grim Reaper circled behind the student and came up behind him and put this huge hand on his shoulder and lifts him up. I mean, he didn't even do it particularly gently. You know, death takes you. And he took him, and they walked out, and then the police officer walked in and read the obituary to the class.
Devin is 17 years of age. He's from Duncanville, Texas, and he was killed in an alcohol-related automobile crash on April 27, 2000. He is survived by his parents, Walter and Claudia. Devin was a junior at Duncanville High School, where he was a member of the Duncanville High School band and enjoyed playing hockey. Devin's family and friends remember him because he liked to have fun. Memorial service will be held at the Alexander Auditorium on the campus of Duncanville High School at 10 a.m. on April 28, 2000. And may Devin rest in peace.
I went into my Spanish class, and a couple of my friends looked over and snickered, but when I think it really started to have an effect when someone asked me a question and I didn't answer, and I think that's when you start having to think about, you can't ask this person questions anymore. They can't respond to you because they're not here. And I had a couple people that when I came back they said, "Well, Michael, we're really glad that you're not dead and that you can talk now." So I think in that sense, it does have as an effect because you see them there, but you're not allowed to interact.
They'd run up to me and hug me and say it was nice that I was alive and to have me back, and I missed them a lot. We were gone for 2 days, and it was rough not seeing them and everything, and I think it hit close to them too because I was gone for that. It made them think, what if Sherry was gone for a while?
Lots of my friends know that I don't drink or anything like that, and that I don't really care for them to be drinking, but it's not something I can stop them on. And so I think since they saw that and they saw some of their friends in there and that happening to them, they realized what a serious thing it could be and it could turn out to be. So.
A lot of people came up to me and they were like, "I'm glad you're alive," and all this stuff.
Some of the students, basically, they're like, "Hey man, I thought you were dead." It's like, man, I broke my arm.
People watched what I was doing all the time because I was in this video. And so I felt I had to set a role for myself and be like, well, I'm not like what I am in the video. And because people would always come up to me and be like, "Oh, you killed all those people and da-da-da-da, shouldn't you be in jail?" And it's like, no, it's just acting, And they're like, "I hear you really do that." And I'm like, no,
I've chosen not to drink as my own personal choice. And so that the driving part was never an option addition to that. So I hope that my convictions would be strong enough.
The Living Dead of Duncanville High School participated in an optional activity consisting of a field trip to David Clayton and Sons Funeral Home. The families of the participating students, the seriously injured DWI victims, and law enforcement personnel are invited to attend and mingle with the students arm in arm to mourn the loss of real people.
We would position the body on the table and get ready to embalm.
what you see behind Nancy, this is what we call an embalming station. This is a embalming machine. This is where we get water supplies, aspirators, water for the embalming chemicals, things of that nature. All the embalming is done right here on this table.
Nancy Dorr, who is the aftercare counselor, was wonderful, and she showed them things and explained how things are done. And she told me afterwards, she said, these are great kids. There was no joking. They treated this in the somber manner that it should be, and they learned a lot. And then they boarded the bus again, and then they went down to the retreat site.
In addition to the mock crash and the optional activities, an overnight leadership retreat is conducted for the student volunteers representing those who died. This simulates for students and their families the experience of their being gone after death.
The retreat was for the accident victims and all the 15-minute or 10 or 15-minute kids that were taken out of the class. All of those kids that were involved in the program were called the living dead. They couldn't go home, they were dead. And the funeral was the next day, so they couldn't just go home and pick up their lives, because that's not how it really is. Their families had to be without them that night, and they had to be without their families.
Put yourself in the situation when you hear on the news and read about it in the papers that people have been killed and there's accidents because of this, to put yourself in the situation and realize that it can happen to you, and it does hit home, and it does affect everyone, and not just you. It'll affect your family and your friends, because they have to deal with you after you're gone. It's not just all about you, and you need to think about that.
It's a hard situation to be put in, so try not to put yourself in that situation, because it's hard to get out of. I mean, don't always depend on your parents. If anything, if you feel any doubt in your mind, just call your parents or call another friend. I know I've had friends that are like always on hand. Like if you call them from a party or something, they will come pick you up, you know. Just call a friend, call an older adult or sibling or something, just because you'll be peer pressured into getting into that car, because it's so hard to, like, your friends are sitting there like, come on, nothing's gonna happen, you know. And that happened to me after the video, you know. And they're like, dude, it's not going to happen. And I'm like, no, dude, for real, I'm not playing, you know. I don't want to get in the car with y'all. And they're like, no, I'm cool. And I'm like, no, I'll just have someone else take me home. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, you know. Don't feel shy to ask someone else to give you a ride home. And that's exactly what I did.
I would tell them to turn to the person they consider their role model, to go to that person and to tell them exactly what they're thinking, exactly what they're feeling, and give that person an opportunity to help them stop and reflect and think about what's coming. Nothing lasts forever. Nothing can be that bad that you have to run away and hide in a bottle or a beer can. Just take time, just stop and be careful and be cautious. Think about yourself, think about your parents, your grandparents, your siblings. None of them want to come and look at you in a casket, and you don't want to miss the rest of your life.